Hey,
Hello, hello.
hello,
Good
hello.
afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to our Conversations for Change talk today that we're having with Alexandra Meal on circular economy. And I hope everybody's going okay out there. We at Future Law, we're having these discussions around issues that we are curating relating to policy initiatives that can help us deal and address with wicked challenges. And circular economy, we are looking at it this month. Last month, we were looking at AI and
Mhm.
ethics and taking a justice lens toward big data and AI. And this is one of the lenses that we use in curating policies for a better future. And this month, we're looking at circular economy because for those of you who don't know, you learn a little bit about it in this conversation with Alex. And Alex hasn't come yet, so we're waiting on Alex to enter the studio. So Anya and I will chat with you a little bit until he comes. But circular economy is certainly being promoted as a transformative framework for how we think about our relationship with the resources that we use and the materials and the environment, our relationship with the environment, which has really been put in the spotlight over the last few decades. Understanding that our relationship with the environment is degenerative and not really serving us. So we're seeing a lot of movement at international organization level, even at national government levels, to adopt and start thinking about how they could implement circular economy into, general public governance and management of our resources. And so we at Future Law, we are asking the question, okay, it looks good, it sounds good, it smells good, and I actually think it's a step forward in the right direction, rethinking the goal of our economic activities. But at Future Law, we always try to take a lens that interrogates new policy initiatives, a lens that looks at what are the social and human and equitable aspects
Mhm.
of the
Mhm.
framework. And I know, Anya, you have your thoughts on circular economy as well.
Oh well. I mean, we've been talking about it for years, and at first I was very skeptical about it. I kind of always felt as if it's not doing enough for us. But I'm actually very excited about diving into the masterclass on 24th, really getting to know what the laws are, what the policy looks like, and we do need the laws to incentivize people into the right type of behavior. And then the second thing is that as we speak about these policies and how we should approach them, we always end up thinking, or at least talking about how we should move from just putting the new laws and policies into the system because there's an abundance of them already and it's really hard to follow with everything. But rather go into a direction where we embody these rules, where we are creating these rules because we really deeply understand and agree with the notion, with the values that we want to stand up for. And circulation of the economy is one of them. But this is what excites me about Alexandra, who's going to join us very soon as well, because he's really putting a human-centric aspect onto the circular economy. He really is like starting to talk about what is it in it, what's in it for the human, and what is it that we can do. I mean, he's definitely going to be speaking about that to some extent. But yeah, what do you
Yeah,
think about it?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what really attracted me to Alexandre Lemieux and his work, um, for those who don't know, my background is in public procurement law, anti-corruption, governance, these issues from the Caribbean. And in around 2015, 2016, I really started putting a focus on the circular economy because I had been teaching and training and advocating and working with public sector organizations to think more about the human and social and environmental impact of the buying transaction. and how do we incorporate, how do we measure those impacts and incorporate it into what we're doing. And it was in around 2014, 2015, 2016, I started to think through the circular economy. And I saw, wow, the circular economy certainly creates a powerful lever to use the buying function to address the degradation of the environment and resource inefficiencies, right? And so I started teaching around circular economy and circular procurement in 2015, 2016. But what blew my mind in around 2017, and so I taught it because I saw it, okay, from an environmental and resource perspective, it does make procurement better. It does make our economic growth more sustainable within the limits, our planetary limits and our finite resources limits. It was never the silver bullet for me because, like you, Anya, my, lens is, well, how does this impact humans in society? And how can we employ this? I mean, it was a question, but I just never put it together that maybe we should be thinking about how circular economy could address that. And then in 2017, I came across the work of Alexandre Lemieux, and I was, wow, he is one of the most distinctive voices in this space. Because he is speaking about, if we're talking about resource efficiencies and creating what are called closed loops, and I don't want to talk too high because we're going to break down these concepts a little bit at our masterclass later this month, later this year, but masterclass later this year. So he says, if we're talking about resource efficiency and closing the loop on our resources and not wasting our resources, he says, but the greatest resource we have are ourselves. I mean, we are such an incredible creative force on the planet. And how is that not being integrated into as a stock and flow in the circular economy concept? And when I started reading what he was writing about regenerative economies and linking it to the donut economics with Kate Raworth's work and working with Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is, I guess, the foundation, I think, that is doing the most in the space of circular economy, I said, this guy is really bringing a distinctive approach to this. And I'm wondering where Alex is, because he's not in studio yet. And Alex has been back and forth with me. He is supposed to be here, and we want to bring him in. Alex, where are you? I just sent him a text, guys. So we'll hold on and wait to see where Alex is. Yeah. Yeah, but Anya, I just, so this, I think a lot of people with the change of hours and all of that.
Yeah, true.
I mean, even before. He's not coming 1 hour later thinking, oh my God, guys, I thought this was the time.
Time actually changed, so that might be the case.
A couple of days ago.
True. Yeah. Hello, Alinka. Good to see you here. Yeah, but Margaret, maybe we can actually address the thing that we both feel very passionate about as well, and that is the public procurement and the connection to blockchain technology, because that's also one of the aspects that is quite interesting as well. We can't really move towards having a law and policy and just crafting all these rules without really implementing or developing the infrastructure, the architecture to bring forth the public procurement to actually make space for circular economy to be implemented in everything that we do. So the way that we procure, let's say, the medicine, or the way we actually want to protect the trees and the forestry and the industry, it really makes me feel as if maybe the industrial revolution that was happening before can be, with the analogy, compared to what was happening in the Middle Ages. And again, this brings me back to what we always say on these calls. It's almost as if with the new normal, after or with this pandemic in place, we now have the ability or maybe the possibility to think that this is the new age Renaissance. It really looks like that. Even if you think about the Renaissance, how it actually happened in 14th century. I mean, come on, that was a dead plug. I mean, it was a pandemic in Florence, in Italy, and it's really a similar situation that they were going through at that time that we are going and observing today. And it altogether brought back the old philosophy, the Greeks, and with that, what was it? The Pythagoras, no, probably someone else that said that the man is actually the measure of all things. But that really makes you think, okay, so if the man is actually the measure of all things, then we really need to think about how do we manage the resources that we use as the mankind.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. For me, even that philosophy about the man, being the, man or whatever of all things, as you say, yes, we, from a creative standpoint, we certainly have created a world that no other living organism seems to have demonstrated the capacity to do. Our creative capacity seems to be way out there compared with other living organisms. However, I think what attracts me more to the concept of circular economy is its relationship or its alignment with what is coming out of natural and physical sciences, evolutionary sciences, about our interconnectedness and interdependence on all living things being interdependent and interconnected on the planet. And if we think about it in this way, the relationships in nature are closed loop relationships. They are relationships where the droppings of a bird is used to feed the worms, which then does something with the soil, which then contributes to the plants that,
The
so
butterfly
every,
effect.
yeah, and there's no waste. And there's something about looking at nature and trying to live in alignment with the principles that we see coming out of nature that, we think, I think with circular economy, there really is an opportunity to explore those kinds of relationships. And to tag on to what you're talking about, the new renaissance, yeah, I think there's a new renaissance, but one of the discourses and that I think really should be brought out more or highlighted more is that when we look at indigenous tribes in Africa and in the global south, in Latin America, in Australia, when we look at indigenous tribes and the way they operate in large part, in alignment with the planet and working with the planet. And many of the principles, I just last week, a colleague of ours, Brian, just called me up and said, Margaret, I see you promoting circular economy and all of that. But we in Kenya, we've been doing this for so many years. This is how we live. We live in this way. Nothing goes to waste. And we take what is wasted and we repurpose it in another aspect of our economy and all of another aspect of our affairs. And so there's nothing new under the sun, it said in Ephesians. And I feel circular economy is bringing more alignment to our creativity as human beings. We've been exceptionally creative. And how do we now bring that more into alignment with the universal laws, with natural law principles, so that our creativity is and our freedom to create is done in a responsible way for the resources that we have, to create.
But is it right to say that it's not really anything new under the sun? I mean, I totally agree that we shouldn't be rediscovering or the water. So what's the expression? But I mean, when thinking about how tribes are dealing or how they're aligned with the natural resources that they're having, it's the global aspect that hasn't previously been seen before, isn't it? I mean,
Absolutely.
we have become so complex as a society, thinking about just how we are living in a global economy, being connected, having the ability to travel around and to actually form the economy that is of a much larger scale. And I think that to some extent that the problem actually lies that we are not able to identify what are the dynamics within our system at all. We don't have the capacity to even think of it. And then when you have all these statistical data, it really takes a lot of human resources, a lot of thinking, a lot of research that you then need to know how to best use to really form policies. And then again, the usual problem that we also address is that the policies as they are being now created are still based on the narrative that we have the nation states. And it really brings me back, okay, yeah, so how do we use the knowledge or the experience that we can still observe with tribes, that we can still observe with the indigenous people, and then implement that and scale it so that it really becomes adopted by the global society we live in today?
Yeah, for
What do
sure.
we need to create? How do we even go about that?
Right. And that's why, going back to the point you made about the interconnection between blockchain and procurement and circularity, yes, we are now in this. You see, I'm now getting a message from Alex. He thought it was an hour from now. We always knew this was going to happen, uh, because the clocks went back, guys. Guys, the clocks
Mm.
went back.
Is he going
I'm
to
just
be
sending
able
a
to join
message.
out?
I'm just sending a message to Alex.
This happens.
Yes, it happens. And I mean, Alex was posting about this just a few minutes ago. Oh, come join him on the thing. But you see, because I think, guys, the clocks went back here in UK and Europe. Yeah, 2 minutes. He's going to join us in 2 minutes. So we can just continue our conversation until he comes. Bear with us, guys. This is what happens when we are dealing with the virtual situation.
You know what? We might actually be able to delete that post factum. So we're going to
Yeah,
be making
afterwards. So
time
it's only
lapses.
you guys who are live that are, getting
You're
this.
getting some extra perks,
Yeah.
live ones. Yeah, but you
Yes,
were
it is
saying
now.
about
It
the.
is now.
Mhm.
Yes, he's saying it says 2 p.m. It is 2:18 GMT. Right. So no, I just want to pick up on that point because I think it's really an important point that you are making there about globalization. Yes, globalization is newish, right? I think less new than people really recognize, because I think globalization
Interesting.
started happening since the 14th and 15th century. Okay,
So the Renaissance.
14th and 15th century, because I'm sorry, that's when everyone was going out from Europe and exploring and
New
colonizing
frontiers.
and enslaving and all of that, to support their economies, right? And created a series of extractive industries in land spaces that were not owned by Europe. And so I think that's where the globalization experiment began, and I think coming from the Caribbean, particularly, we are the product of the first experiment in globalization, in my view, um, and we have very interesting lessons that can be brought there, and that's a big point that I try to make when I'm teaching in any of these courses that I'm a part of, because a lot of people, because at certain levels, it is promoted that we need to open up our economies. And from a good governance approach, we need to liberalize trade, and we need to put these rules in place in global South countries, so that they can open up their markets. But truth be told, our markets have always been open for business. Okay. And the rules that are being touted to be put in place now, which are for anti-corruption, public procurement, under the thing of trade liberalization and fair competition and all of that, are actually rules that are stymieing the ability of governments to harness the strategic power of their public procurement function. Don't start me on this, because this is not the topic we are going to talk about. But I think the point I want to make about globalization is this, that you were raising, which I think is very important in this conversation, particularly from a circular economy perspective. We now, with the new way globalization is operating, is that we have these long, huge, protracted global supply chains with a series of impacts all over the place. And as you say, how do we make sense of the relationships that exist? And this is where the beauty of systemic thinking comes in, which is what we are trying to do at Future Law, bringing together all of these things. This is why AI and blockchain becomes critical in public procurement, in global supply chain management, because as human beings with our finite minds, we can't manage that level of complexity. But with AI and blockchain, employing those technologies within the supply chain, we can now start to track in real time, and hold in real time in a decentralized way the information relating to the supply chain. So this is the whole Industrial Revolution 4.0, the Internet of Things. Alex has come. Alex has arrived. Woo! Yeah.
Hello, hello.
But before we should introduce Alex, shouldn't we? Anya, do you want to just introduce who he is? As I said before Alex came on, I think in this discussion, Alex is one of the most distinctive voices speaking to what we perceive to be a gap in circular economy discourses, and that is how do we go beyond thinking only of material and resource efficiencies and environmental efficiencies to think about, the role of humans and society in this circular paradigm. And maybe you could do the formal introduction of him, Anya.
I would love to. So we've actually met Alexander before, but for everybody else, Alexander Lemille is a pioneer of the concept of basically the circular human sphere. And we will be addressing the challenges or the issues of just how we ground the circular innovation within just framework. So he's a speaker, he's a writer, an advisor, and a system thinker in human prosperity. And he's also a co-founder of the African Circular Economy Network, if I'm not mistaken, and a senior lecturer. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a socially just circular economy. So he's been publishing a lot of articles. There's plenty of them, at least 80. Those have been published in the Beam, Renewable Matter, the South African Journal of Ecology, UNIDO, LPs, The Guardian, most valuable. They are basically on LinkedIn, but we'll be probably posting some websites as well. And he's been creating the ecosystem models of life based on human abundance, or abundance, as I saw somewhere, by inserting the circular human sphere. So there is a website from Alex that we're going to be sharing in the chat. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Alex. Good to see you. Good to see you again. 24 minutes late, though.
No, it says 2 p.m. GMT, which is in half an hour, not now. But anyway, let's not discuss that.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, oh gosh,
Anyway.
this is my challenge again. So, UK is not in GMT time now. When we went back.
Oh, you're kidding me! Really, this is happening? We've seen that already with the summit, because when we were having a summit just last year.
Oh God, we can't get it right. He was in the summit. We can't get it right.
I know.
We still can't get it right.
And it's when the time changes, the time is wrong. It's just a huge mess.
And this is me quarreling with you in the chat. Come on, you're late. I'm kidding. I wasn't quarreling with you, but yeah. Hey, sorry, Alex. Sorry.
Good to have you here now.
Our bad.
It's okay.
Right?
It's okay. So how have you been?
We're good. Let's just jump right in. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to circular economy, and also a little bit about the circular economy as well. So what is the circular economy, and how did you come to be working in the space of circular economy?
Yeah, I mean, as the title says, this is we will be moving in, hopefully, in a circular world. And what does it mean exactly? I mean, it's a concept that was launched about 11 years ago by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, but it's based on different concepts. It's based on performance economy, biomimicry, blue economy. I mean, there are different predecessor to the circular economy, and it's by putting all these elements together that they came up with this vision of a restorative and regenerative economic model. So where on one hand we would restorate the goods that we use, okay. So the technical elements of our economy. So everything that has been made and can be possibly made again. And on the other hand, the regenerative aspect of an economy, which is more like all the food and non-food elements that you would either use in a form or shape, and make sure that it returns back so that we can either feed again the people later on, so by regenerating the soils, or reuse bio-based element into our chairs and our all the elements that we use in everyday life. So the bio-based or biological elements. So that's the definition of circular economy, and the foundation of economics behind that is that by reusing these elements again and again, maybe the building in which I am now won't cost as much, because if I can reuse the bricks and mortars, therefore I can account from accounting terms and legal terms for maybe sharing the cost of that building into several lives and several ways of using the elements of that building. So if I access some goods, I will move away from programmed built obsolescence, and therefore waste less. So behind the concept of circular economy, you have the concept of designing out waste and pollution from our economic systems.
Right.
So that's what circular economy is. And by selling goods again and again, either from repairing them, rebuilding them, so we call it remanufacturing, redistributing them, sharing them, putting them in common so that we can all access the same pots, or returning them to soils, this is where you make your economic return. Okay, so you make your money by making sure the good lasts longer and can be resell again in different shape or form. So that's for circular economy. Now,
how did you come to it?
Yeah, it was back in 2013, 2014, after studying the concept. I was like, okay, great. So this is the next economic model. But where are we? I mean, we are customers and we are users, and consumers, and users. So before we were just consumers in the linear economy. You use something and then you throw it, so you consume. Now we use something and we return it. So that's for the restorative part of the economy. But we still consume, obviously, food and other elements. But that's it, So it doesn't make me. It makes me dream, because we design out waste and pollution from our system. So great.
Mm-hmm.
But the social justice part, where is it? And I'm still in an economic model, so I'm still considered a wallet. And great, I'm now responsible for the goods I use or the food I eat. Great. But I need value. I need social value. I need justice. I need to be recognized for who I am, a human being. And in 2021, we can. I don't want to be seen as someone who critiques or is there to question things, but we need to, and we discussed that before, Margaret. But we need to to have other goals than just amassing and collecting stuff, and whether they are circular or not, yeah, great. But amassing stuff during our lifetime, maybe there's some other goals and some other objective that we can create. So this notion of success was also a question that I had. So by looking at all these aspects, I'm like, okay, let's look at the planet, and maybe the economy is a bit too restrained. I mean, it's a too siloed approach of how can we live for good forever on this planet without destructing it. And there is no notion of consuming less is better or consuming different is better. Because you can still consume in a circular way, but you don't answer the issue of consumption rebound. And consumption rebound is that, okay, since I don't have to buy this computer, I don't have to buy this phone to access it. Therefore, I have some spare money that I can use somewhere else. And therefore, I end up at the end of the month consuming more than what I should. And there is no such notion as well. So all of this came to the suggestion of looking at the planet and saying, okay, where are we? Who are we? What are we? How do we solve the issue of regrowing the biosphere? And this is the only thing that needs to regrow. The rest shouldn't regrow. And who are we and what are we here for? Are we here for consuming and using stuff, or can we do a bit better than that? So it could be a bit more spiritual or self-consciousness and so on and so forth. So by looking at the planets, I'm like, okay, from a symbiotic perspective, there are biological elements, and we are within that biological sphere, and there are technical elements, so to build our stuff. And by inserting the humans as part of the equation, you move the cursor. Instead of saying you are users and consumers of goods and you will be using and consuming goods a bit better because there won't be any waste and any pollution, now you are saying, can we solve the equation of life on Earth? And this is another level, because it's your relationship as a human being, as a circular being, because we are biology, and we are part of nature, and we are nature. And I don't like using that term nature, because nature separates human from the rest. And so how can we be part again of the ecosystem without destroying it, but building it? So if you're not destroying the ecosystem, 8 billion people on the planet, it doesn't matter, the number of people on the planet, because if we are part of the system by considering ourselves fully adapted to it, and by making sure that the economic aspect of that world is about caring for people and for everything. So you just don't care for just the goods, but to repair them and to remake them, but you also say I build a caring economy whereby I repair goods and I protect people, and I include people in the economic model, and therefore the social justice is part of that model.
How is that different, though, from consumption? Because to my knowledge, consumerism was actually emerging because we put a human being in the center of the attention. So first we had pure capitalism, and then the advertisement grew big. And with the advertisement, we actually made the focus on how do we satisfy the needs and desires of every single individual. And this is where the consumerism actually came to be. So how exactly is that notion that you're now describing different?
Yeah, in fact, I mean, the human sphere is in the middle of the circular economy graphic because that was the best place to put it. But in the more recent graphic of the human sphere, we are within the biosphere. We are part of the biosphere, and the technical sphere is a bit on the side. So we are no longer in the middle, and it's not about putting the human in the middle. It's about saying that there are I mean, there is a scarcity in the world and there is abundance in the world, and the scarcity and the abundance is not in the same place anymore. We used to believe petrol, gas, fossil fuel, and technical elements, so all these minerals and metals that we extract were abundant, and it's no longer true. They are part of the scarce world now, and therefore you need to look at what is now abundant and what is now scarce. And that's why circular economy has been launched, is to say, okay, guys, you can no longer make flat screens, flat TV screens, and now I see all these cameras with three lenses. So the concentration of material per goods has reached levels which are not sustainable. I mean, you cannot have 8 billion people with 8 billion phones with 3 lenses in each pocket. All this comes from rare earths. The more you flatten your goods, the more you need to dig deeper to look for rare earths and rare metal. And therefore, it's an exponential model that we are in. And I'm losing the.
But I want to jump in there. I want to jump in there, Alex, because when I listen to you and I listen to how you describe the circular economy, not yet, we're not talking about the human sphere aspect that you're bringing in, but when you discuss it, it seems so aligned to sustainable development, and it seems so aligned to the goals of sustainable development. Yet sustainability is it's placed on 3 pillars: the economy, the society, and the environment. But circular economy seems, primarily to be in the space of resource efficiency and, relationship with the planet. Primarily resource and materials efficiency.
It's resource efficiency and effectiveness.
Right.
You need to have both. Oops, the camera. You need to have both dimensions. Efficiency, because we've been doing resource efficiency for a long time now. You need to be efficient in terms of resource management, but you need to be also effective, i.e. resilient. Your access to the resource needs to be happening all the time. And the resilience part of what brings the circular economy is super important. And you need to have a balance between efficiency and effectiveness in your circular supplies, how you feed into your factories and make sure there will always be these minerals and metals feeding into your factories. And this is where I wanted to go to, is that these minerals and metals seems to be still present on the earth. I mean, in the earth's crust, there is plenty of such metals and minerals. The thing is that it's deeper, so you cannot dig deeper, because otherwise you're going to extract to generate more CO2 emissions. So there are some limitations about the extractive activity, which is being limited within the circular model. Now, there are one side of the economy which is going super scarce, so all these resource-based elements, and one side which is abundant, which is our biosphere, but the biosphere is disappearing at a faster rate, and the human sphere, where there's plenty of people who can do stuff to change their behavior. And what I'm just saying is that if we tax scarcity, if we put increased taxes on resources that are disappearing, maybe we will care for these resources, and maybe phones with 3 lenses will appear in different shape and forms, or at least we will make sure that these phones can be returned, like the Fairphone which I have in my hand now, which is made in a modular way. And abundance, which is human knowledge, human energy, empathy is part of what I understand of abundance to me, and the fact that we are biological beings as well, and circular beings ourselves, and we need to remove taxes on labor, and this is part of the legal discussions, drop taxes on labor while increasing taxes on some resources, And there are some programs that have done the calculation for the governments, and the tax revenues are about the same. Where when you increase taxes on resources, therefore you are more careful about these resources, and you create jobs, and people. There is more and more solutions to repair goods that now comes in a modular way because they are returnable.
Right, but it's also, I mean, I hear you, and I want to push us to the practical aspects of how we integrate social aspects into circular economy. You just mentioned one where you're saying that we can reduce taxes on labor and tax products and tax resource use. You know, what else are we thinking about when we're thinking about the social aspects of circular economy from a practical perspective?
I mean, I usually stay at the higher level because I don't want to jump into. I mean, it's each government, each company's decision to design things differently. But what I'm saying is that if you move into a regenerative principle and restorative principle, automatically in circular economy, the smaller loops are where you create more social return, i.e., the external loop in the circular economy use more energy, fossil fuel energy. The inner loops use more human energy, because the smaller loops you go for, the more you move into repairability, shareability of your goods, mutualization, and all these things. So it's a model that invites you to look for collaboration, to look for sharing stuff, to look for because since there will be less stuff or the goods that you will buy using those things that are disappearing will increase in price. There will be less energy, fossil fuel energy available, and less resources at your hand available. So that engage the fact that you will speak to your neighbors to exchange things from energy to resources. You will share possibly gardens for food or for other things, because it's an economy that invites you to look for that, to create jobs locally, and when you, it's also an invitation to look at a region, and these are the topics that we speak about in a post-COVID world. A region where we will relocalize factories that are often in Southeast Asia, in China, and so on. And instead of having a centralized factory for the world, obviously China will still be very active in making stuff, but the idea is to decentralize, relocalize some part of the activity. But you shouldn't do that as it used to be in the 70s or in the 60s. You should look at the region in which you will relocalize. What are the energy in that region available? What are the resources in that region available? The skills of the people, and this is where the social aspects comes into practice. The knowledge is very important, and you shouldn't forget that the people's knowledge is the most valuable resource that you have in any economy. And therefore, you need to relocalize activity, but by making sure that those factories or those units are designed for the targeted region or cities, so that it can allow feedback loops, i.e., you make goods for the city or you create activities for the city, and the people in the cities are sharing those elements, are collaborating, mutualizing these resources, but there is a return back into where they've been made for maintenance, repair, collaboration, sharing, and so on and so forth. So the knowledge stays locally, and the units, where the production unit and consumption unit are made according to the local customs, the local needs of the people. So you are more focused on the needs of the people, and you can interact much faster to address the needs of the people. And what the circular human sphere is saying is that we should focus on Max Sniff's needs, or on human needs, and we should design the next model to address those social needs. And once you have addressed the needs, you don't need to move into too much of overconsumption model. If you base your local economic model on addressing the needs of the people.
That's so important. And you are, I see, the co-founder of the African Circular Economy Network. And I would say that across the continent of Africa and in other post-colonial states, the way the economies were set up, it really wasn't around what are the local needs of the society and the environment.
And it's still not
exactly.
designed around the needs of
and so I mean, you see what is being what is ravaging the continent is the way in which extractive industries operate. It's part of what is ravaging the continent, right? And so as the head of the African Circular Economy Network, how are you elevating the discourse around this issue about how we look at the resources that are in African countries and how we are linking those resources to social and environmental impacts in those countries, as opposed to just extracting it and it goes out and government,
Also, just
So
for the
first of all,
reference, do we have any good examples of these type of a local management of resources and then being really mindful of what the people need? Because I've heard you both talking about the issues, and I would love to hear you. How do you manage and how do you see that? How do you tackle? But just to be clear, do we have a good example?
we have, some great companies around the globe that look at that, but it's still there is always something missing in the block, in the puzzle. But I recently had a discussion with Bill Reed, which was a graph that I shared on LinkedIn lately. Bill Reed, since the late 90s, has been involved in regenerating natural spaces and ecosystems based according to the needs of some local group. You could call them ethnical group or regional bioregions. And by looking at by regenerating those ecosystems, it's not necessarily in urban systems, but more like landscapes. He has taken into account, and his teams have taken into account the needs of the people, how they could live better by maintaining the ecosystems locally. They were damaged ecosystems. So by starting like that, it's one way to address social needs. So it's Regenerative by Bill Reed. He's based in the US, but he's done a lot of work in Australia and New Zealand.
There are many examples. 1 minute, I just want to say there are many examples, and in the masterclass we're doing later this month, we are going to be sharing some of the examples. But I really want you to try to address the question that I asked, Alex.
Yeah, just on the African Circular Economy Network, I'm not the head of the network. I'm a co-founder. When I was in South Africa, we launched this network. And one of the reasons behind is that my children are half African. So just to reiterate why I do what I do. So Africa is my future, given that my children are from there. And basically, the idea of the network is to not only talk about circular economy, but also talk about social inclusiveness. And we look at circular economy as a mean to an end, as a mean to rebuild a damaged ecosystem or create economic model not from scratch. But what the beauty of Africa is that there's still some infrastructure to build.
Right.
And these could be built modularly to be rebuilt or to be dismantled, to be rebuilt elsewhere. The communication between the people can be rethink. The cities of tomorrow can be built from scratch without waste and pollution embedded within them, as we know in Europe. So that's the beauty of the African continent. The other thing with the African continent is that they are collaborative people. I mean, when you walk in the streets of Nairobi, Abidjan, and other, people talk to each other. I saw the other day the taxi drivers were sharing information about how to get rid of the traffic jam, and so you don't see that in Europe. Or people come to you and say, "Why are you waiting for that bus here? You should go this way." And so it's super collaborative, and it's always about sharing, helping each other, so that in a scarce, because people have come from a scarcity world where there were maybe some cars, but there were no parts, like in Ghana, where you have the one of the biggest repair center for cars outside of Accra. And for generations, they were having cars but no spare parts, and therefore they had to find ways to recycle, repair, rebuild parts from someplace else that would work. And they are even able today to repair electronic engines with mechanical parts. So the knowledge of the people is an example here about how can we sort out ourselves in a scarce world by talking to each other, by sharing knowledge, by mutualizing forces, so that we find solutions. So Africa has a collaborative populations. This is super important as we enter in a world which is scarce from a resource standpoint. Africa doesn't have the same problem as the rest of the world, which is over-consuming. We can't. My country has already bypassed the capacity limits of the planet for about a month already, and we are just in in early April.
So and can you share what country you're in?
France.
Yeah.
So since the 17th of March, we have bypassed the bio capacity limits of the planet. So that's just an example. So what will happen to a country like France is that it will spend the next 100 years to go back to one planet of consumption, or one planet of behaving according to one planet limitation. And that means a lot of investments. While in Africa, the biocapacity of the planet has been bypassed in 2015. So there's still an opportunity to, instead of believing in the growing economy forever, maybe there's still an opportunity to look an alternative, circular and socially inclusive model, whereby you would slow down that pressure. That pressure that human beings have on the biocapacity. So that's another element which is in a circular economic approach, which is an opportunity instead of a disadvantage. And the third one is the belief in technology is different in Africa. I mean, there have been so many decades of scarcity again. I mean, we moved from a scarcity world to recycling world, and now the next stage would be reusing, but not from a professional standpoint. The belief in low tech is there. There are low tech hubs in Nigeria, in Kenya, and other countries, and low tech is addressing the needs of the people. So you build an object which does exactly what you expect it to do, but it doesn't have hundreds of functionalities that you will not use. It does exactly what you want the object to do at the end of the day, but it uses less energy. Okay, so low tech is that it's the similar approach, except that we don't base the innovation or the discovery of the object on the concentration of high energy, like fossil fuel concentration. So we move more into a distributive energy model where the object will do what it is required to do. And low tech is one of the possibility of tomorrow's to live in a world where there will be less access to petrol and gas for everybody. And therefore, we would need to look at alternative technology to build objects of tomorrow. So low tech uses more human energy, i.e., it comes into modular fashion and it's repairable. The object is repairable, so it's not as complex. So we move from complexity into more simplicity of the object, and it uses less energy, fossil fuel based, and more distributive energy, so solar, wind, and all these kinds of energy to do what we expect the object to do. And that's an interesting thing, because in Europe, since we are in Europe, I believe, the belief in high tech is paramount, and we believe that technology will solve everything, whereas we know that the technologies that we see on videos all the day on LinkedIn and elsewhere are based on fossil fuel and concentrated energy, and this is maybe not possible for everybody, at least in an equitable world. You need to think about, will I be able, I mean, it's great to have these technologies, but are they going to be available for everybody on the planet from an social equity standpoint? Or should we be looking at goods made differently in a socially inclusive world, which is not energy-vor for one part of the population and let everybody else down because there is no access to energy. So that's the positive aspects of Africa from a circular standpoint. And yeah.
Yeah, because okay, you're speaking about Africa, and you're looking at it particularly from my perspective. It seems hyper local. It looks like you're looking at smaller and smaller loops within Africa, and so the micro level and maybe the meso level. But there's some macro aspects about the continent and its resource use. And its resource use in the context of global supply chains, and its resource use in the context of consumption patterns in another part of the world. And I'm wondering, is the African Circular Economy Network providing any sort of leadership on how circularity could contribute, circular thinking can contribute to managing that macro issue about resource use in Africa?
Well, we remain a small NGO, and with the people that we have in each country, who are expert in their own field. Therefore, these macro topics might not be addressed, and we don't have the necessary power to respond to all these macro trends and influence on the continent. All I can say is that the more you go for relocalization of activity, and it's also good for Africa, the more you think about building activity and production units near Lagos, near Nairobi, near Marrakesh, to respond to the needs of the local citizens, the less you will be working for the rest of the world in production units which are centralized and extractive. And so we need, and Africa is one of the the biggest place for extractive activity, mining activity. And the more we move into circularity, the more we leave this extractive world. And the more it's going to be socially equitable, because you will Leaving the extractive world would mean we get the component back so that we can clean them, maintain them, repair them, create local jobs, remake the goods locally. If you with a fair phone like this phone, since it's made modular, if you distribute it in Lagos tomorrow,
Where is that made?
It's made in. I mean, it's a Dutch phone. Okay, it's made completely in modular with modular components. You can unscrew, but obviously the factory is still somewhere in China. So, but what I'm saying is that the rare earth element, the scarce resources are there. But if you distribute millions of units of this phone in Nigeria or in Tanzania or wherever, all of a sudden there's no IP on these elements. So you can access them and you can rebuild a phone made in Nigeria, a phone made in Tanzania from that phone, because everything can be removed, and you can even go online and shop for each part, and you can repair it yourself. So everything is repairable, everything is evolutive. You can change the camera, you can change the performance of the battery tomorrow, but you can also reuse those parts later on to make a phone again. I see that there is the PC called Framework, which are now made modular as well. So shipping millions of units of the current PCs and smartphones that we see in a poor country doesn't do any good. It ends up after 1 or 2 years into the landfill, and at best it's being recycled by the informal sector, which is behind 40% of the recycling activity in Africa. Shipping millions of goods of Framework or Fairphone or Framework PCs, which are modular, open, no IP, open source, and you can repair them, fix them, access to spare parts or exchange the parts, create jobs locally. So your trickle-down effect is happening for real. So it's the trickle-down effect in a linear economy it was a dream, never come to life. But in a circular economy, which is at the same time socially just, addressing the needs of the people, and whereby we can restore and reuse the products locally to make those products again locally, is far more inclusive, and the trickle-down effect is happening for real.
Thank you so much for that. I think we're going to have a lot more use cases, actually, that you're going to be presenting, Margaret, on the masterclass, and there's going to be plenty other things that you're going to be talking about, the circular economy practice in Europe, in UK, in US, Canada. We're really going to be diving into that aspect from a bit of a macro scale, of a global scale, and then diving into each of jurisdiction. But can you just briefly tell us a bit more about that masterclass and when it is going to be, just so that we know when to follow up?
We finished with Alex?
Sure thing. No,
I'm looking at
wait.
it. Like in a time. No, yeah, but I think the circular human sphere, Alex, your topic, because if we're rounding it off, we're looking at the time. Yeah, Anya's right. I think it really, from the time I began my reading on it, I found that it captured the social aspects of the human social element of the circular economy in a way that I had never thought of it before, and I found it was quite revolutionary in the way in which you capture it, looking at human beings as part of the biosphere that ought to be thought of when we're looking at the loops and looking at the relationships, and we need to go beyond seeing human beings as consumers and or users. And so I know there's a lot of more work to be done to continue to articulate that concept, I think, and the implications of what you are trying to say there from a justice standpoint.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't have time to go to dig deeper into the concept, but But instead of just designing out waste and pollution, I suggest to design out waste, pollution, social inequities, poverty, and so on. And a world where you embed the regenerative dimension of our ecosystems, the human as part of that ecosystem, and an activity world or economic world where you say, since the goods that will be circulating in that world addresses the needs of the people that live in that world, and at the same time include the social inclusion, social justice aspect, i.e., the activities are relocalized where I live in a bioregion that I restore. All of a sudden, the relationship between the people will differ, and all of a sudden there will be less injustices in such a world. But if you start embedding this dimension into your economic model, because it's an economic model that we talk about, we would be living in a very different world than we live in today.
Yeah, I love what you just said there, designing out social inequity and injustice. The same way we're trying to design out the waste and the pollution and all of that, how do we design out social inequity and injustice? How do we bring circular? And I think that really captures what you are bringing into the space as well.
Yeah, it's a matter of perceiving abundance. Where is abundance today? Where is scarcity today? The rules of the game have changed. There is no more the abundance that we thought it was in the goods that we use. Therefore, we need to change the rule of the game, and we need to shift it differently and say, okay, abundance is happening in the ecosystem. Abundance is within the humans themselves, with the knowledge, the energy, distributive energy that they have into repairing things. So we need to create more jobs to repair and restore. And in circular economy, we don't say this is a priority. We say you can recycle, you use a lot of fossil fuel energy, but you can also repair if you decide so. What I'm saying is, no, we need to move away from recycling. I even said we need to design out recycling, because the more we recycle, the more we destroy the component into mashup fragments in order to remake. You have your bottle, your glass bottle. Recycling will destroy the glass bottle into mashup fragment to remake a glass bottle. Okay. In circular economy, we say no. The glass bottle exists, so you need to design to come up with some ideas to clean up the bottle, to repair the cracks, so that we avoid smashing that bottle and remake it again, because we will use more energy. That's what circular economy is saying. So, and what I'm saying is that if we make it a priority to develop ideas of fixing the goods that are less obsolete and more durable, way of living is far more just than this obsolescence, built-in obsolescence that we live in, where we waste and we just spend our times wasting stuff. And a world, I mean, and I will end up with that. I currently study the impact of the city of Roubaix, which is in the north of France, which for the past 6-7 years have put in place a zero waste program for its inhabitants. The city of Roubaix is one of the poorest cities in France. And it seems that there is a correlation between living a life at zero waste and getting out of financial burdens, having more, being more included from a social standpoint around your network of friends and families and neighbors, and because people have access to shared garden to grow their vegetables, they have access to accessories to do compost and grow their food on balconies, and so sometimes they have excess of food and they share it with their neighbor. They don't spend as much money on different things than they used to, and so from a financial standpoint, they eat better. They have less financial burdens, and by eating better, they have better health. So I'm trying to see if there is a correlation between living a life at zero waste and getting people outside of social burdens.
Got you. We
yeah.
have to stop now,
Yeah.
Alex. But thanks so much for the perspectives that you've shared on the circular economy. We're going to continue our conversations with you because we are learning so much from the work that you are doing at the Future Law Institute. And so thank you so much for being here with us today. And yes, we are having a masterclass on circular economy that I am facilitating on April 24th. This month. It's a Saturday. And what we are doing in that masterclass is that we are taking, I would say, a critical lens to the circular economy. At Future Law Institute, it is clear to us that circular economy principles are more aligned to regenerative systems on the planet, living in interconnectedness and interdependence and recognition of that on the planet. And so it certainly is, it's a transformative model in our view for rethinking our relationship with resource use and all of that. And we are also looking at this critically from the perspective of, well, how does this impact? What are the distributional effects of some of the policies that are being considered to incentivize the circular economy? How can we make circularity more just, more equitable? We are really trying to interrogate the issues that are not really in popular discourse, but they are issues that can stymie the development of circular economies in certain countries if we don't address them, right? And so when you come to this masterclass, it's not just about what are the circular economy principles. We're certainly going to cover that, but it's more about what are the policies that are starting to emerge around the world to enable circular economy. How can we critically look at those policies from through a justice lens and an social equity lens? And we are also looking at what are the policies and laws that we actually have in place that will stymie the development of the circular economy. So it really is the law and policy side of circular economy that we felt as we started to curate the knowledge in this area. We felt that we had to go and look in many different places to pull that together. There's some incredible resources being developed by some organizations, which we will point you to for you to get deeper learning. But that's what the masterclass is going to be about. And really, for anyone who is thinking about the future of the economy, you have to be thinking about circular economy. In my view, if you're thinking about the future of the economy, circular economy gives us an opportunity it's like the practical mechanisms we can employ.
It's a toolbox.
Yeah, to achieve this big goal we have of a regenerative system and this big goals we have about sustainable development and the SDGs. Circularity gives us a practical toolkit, industry by industry, as to how we can begin rethinking that. And so anyone thinking along that, whatever type of professional you are, you need to start thinking about how does this impact my industry, my interactions with this industry, in this industry, and what are the policy frameworks going on in my jurisdiction that I can actually support the promotion of or work to dismantle if I am passionate about circular economy in my jurisdiction. So that's what it's about. And at that masterclass, we are also stimulating a new community of practice we are trying to build that I, have invited Alex to be a part of, because I definitely want those who are working, to really bring this about in a real and tangible way, to be able to relate to the professionals who want to learn more and who want to become a part of the change in their jurisdictions. So we are creating a community of practice coming out of that masterclass and creating resources to support professionals who want to be more engaged in this. And finally, in that masterclass, you're going to get a real understanding of the difference between supply chain or supply side approaches to circularity and demand side laws and policies for circular economy. And because that's particularly my area of how we buy and regulating how we buy. And so how can we use not just the carrot of incentivizing? I know people don't like this. How do we use not just the carrot of incentivizing suppliers to do better, but the stick of the law to force them as well? I know people don't like to hear that, but at the end of the day, it's part of our toolkit, it's part of our arsenal. And if we are saying we are racing against time with what's happening on the planet, then we have to use all tools in our toolkit in order to progress, together. Yeah, so that's what the masterclass is about. So
Great.
futurelaw.io/ masterclasses, and of course, Alex, I know you'll be there as well. And we have a couple other experts coming in to be a part of that conversation. So yeah. Yeah, Anya?
So thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for joining us and taking the time on Saturday.
It's really great.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for viewing. We didn't get many questions today, which is different. You all didn't have any challenges for what Alex was saying or what we were saying, or any contributions, but that's all good. Thanks so much for those plugging into this conversation, and for those who will be viewing it after. It will be live on YouTube.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.